Hello and welcome to another episode of Wrestling with Memories. I am Wax the Brain Hussein and I'm joined by Fash, the $1,000,000 fan. Fash, it's been a tremendous week for fans of wrestling. We've just come off the back of NXT 2 days and WrestleMania over 2 nights. And it was great to see some wrestling fans finally back in a stadium. And I was really just excited and very happy for all the wrestlers and fans to see wrestling back to normal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we'd mentioned that having fans back would be great, and yeah, it was a really good setup. It was a shame about the weather on night one, giving it a bit of a delay, but it's added to the whole drama of people waiting for live wrestling. In terms of a crowd, and then the whole storm thing added a kind of funny twist to it as well. But as you say, it was great to just see people in there in the building, and the setup was pretty good in terms of you couldn't really tell where the cutouts were and the lighting, everything was perfect. But two great nights of wrestling. I mean, I guess I'm keen to hear your overall views on the two next events and then WrestleMania, and then I'll, chip in as well.
Yeah, I mean, I always commend NXT to anybody who has got time to watch. I think it's certainly the best wrestling show out there in terms of just pure wrestling. And actually, I think on the entertainment side, they're getting there as well with their angles and their dramas, adding a lot of value to their shows. Interesting, they've moved back to Tuesday nights, which some will say is because they've lost the war to AEW on Wednesday nights. I would say it's probably a wise decision. And immediately, actually, this week they probably posted one of their highest numbers.
And did you say AEW's number?
Yeah.
AEW went well over 1 million, so I think for both of them it's good. But it's if they can both hold on to this now.
That's it. In terms of the actual shows, I mean, they were spread over 2 nights. I would definitely recommend people watch Walter versus Tommaso Ciampa and Finn Balor and Karrion Kross. There were two exceptional matches. The great thing I love about NXT is the variety of the card and just the type of wrestling that you get to see. It's not the same thing over and over again. It's very varied, and everybody puts on a really good show.
In terms of everyone in the mood for night one and night two of WrestleMania.
Absolutely. And WrestleMania, as you mentioned, the whole weather delay just really added to the occasion. We were talking about it, and it gave the talent an opportunity to come out and do some promos that were unscripted, which would make the change, Fash.
Yeah, no, it was good. I mean, it was a bit of a mixed bag in terms of those promos, but it was pretty good. I quite enjoyed it, and it gave it an extra vibe, improvising, and actually they all did well, and it showed that everyone looked like they were right up for it, quite excited about it. So it gave it an extra dimension with the weather. The only thing was you weren't sure if this was going to be one of many delays. Thankfully, it wasn't, and eventually the card kicked off in a big way.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed the actual opening segment where Vince comes out and all of the roster comes out and they're standing there, obviously 2 meters apart because of COVID. And there's a moment where Vince does his typical welcome to WrestleMania. Welcome to WrestleMania!
The thing is, he was not got the same energy. Vince looks super old, bless him, but still as enthusiastic as ever.
Some of the faces of some of the wrestlers. Rhea Ripley particularly was really emotional. And you could tell it meant a lot for wrestlers to have the fans back. As much as the fans like being back, it's probably more important for the wrestlers to have an audience to perform in front of. In terms of the action, Fash, night one, night two, I mean, what were your highlights?
Yeah, for me, night one was the better night. It was interesting because it was kind of night one was baby faces, night two was the heels came out on top. But for me, there was several highlights. Night one, I'll maybe go in a little bit of order, because I think the main event had the biggest highlight for me. But the opener, a true hoss fight between Drew McIntyre and Bobby Lashley. It was a really good big man match, a lot of action between two, and then I think the right man at this point came out on top with Bobby Lashley. I think there's a lot that can happen in that title reign. He's finally been booked the way he should have been booked when he moved over to WWE. It's a shame Brock Lesnar's not around because I think there could be a mammoth match there. And Drew was, he passed out on the Phil Nelson. Some people had some issues with that, but I think, that he's still going to be in the mix. So I think it was a good way to kick things off. So that was a good match. Bad Bunny was certainly a highlight. I've got to say, I was shocked at how good he was. He really trained impressively. The Canadian Destroyer by Bad Bunny is something that I think most people will forget, or the Bunny Destroyer, whatever they wanted to call it.
A couple of wrestlers on Twitter weren't very happy with that because they were like, "Oh, we've just given away the gimmick. This move is supposed to be this exceptional maneuver, but here's this amateur wrestler coming out and doing it on his first
But
attempt.
to be fair, I mean, when it was done by P.T. Williams all those kind of 10, 15 years ago, it was something unique. Since then, people have
Yep.
just, I hate when these moves are used as transitions, but it's been a long while since that's what's happened. And I think, yeah, for him to do it, I can see why some wrestlers would be cross, but, he was really good. And I don't know, did he warrant a place then in the new, we made our best card last week, but with that celebrity match, now maybe get a position on the card?
I think it would be close. I still don't think it was as entertaining as the one we had, which was Ronda
Yeah,
Rousey,
I
Kurt
totally
Angle,
agree.
Triple
But I
H.
think as a celebrity, you could probably say that he's,
Yeah,
for somebody who's not a competitor and a
definitely.
fighter, I think that was, a really impressive showing from him. Cesaro getting his big moment. I think we'd both agree that we were both happy about that. Man, that's not really been pushed properly over the years. I remember when he won the Andre the Giant Battle
Yeah,
Royal. And you thought this was going to be the big push, but nothing really came of it. So it's good to see him get a big moment, and the crowd loved it. And for me, finally, the main event was outstanding between Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair. For me, the whole thing though was we discussed it as it was happening. The moment at the beginning, the real moment of
yeah,
emotion from Bianca Belair, and then Sasha kind of looking at her, kind of nodding, saying, "Yep, we've done it." But then, getting back into character. I think that was such a special moment. Two colored women main eventing WrestleMania for the first time. So I think that just kind of put the exclamation mark on night one, and it was a great match. And I think that match, I would be tempted to put that on our super card if I could go
yeah.
back a week because it was that good.
Definitely, I think the occasion and the match definitely warranted it. Explain to me, Fash, what was all this malarkey about? Why were people complaining about this being the main event of night one? I just don't get it. I mean, to me, it made perfect sense.
Yeah, I don't get it. I mean, I heard Jim Cornette was going absolutely crazy about it. I think for the first time, even his fans turned on him. To me, the winner was supposed to go and get a title shot in the main event of WrestleMania, so they played off that. And it was 2 nights. I, understand that the guys are supposed to main event. That's tradition, and they did on night two. But for me, it was the perfect way to end night one, especially since most of the bad guys won on night two. So for
Yep.
me, anyone that's complaining about it, I don't get it. It was certainly the best match of the night, and it had that real emotion. I think what wrestling's about. And I think Sasha Banks, I know you're a big fan. I think she moves into immortality with that performance.
Yeah.
She really showed that she's probably, I think, the best of this generation.
Yeah, I thought the ending to that match was terrific. The hair
The
whip,
whip.
the whip that was heard around the world. One day we'll be talking about that, and the mark that it left on her stomach or abdomen was just incredible.
Yeah.
And you really felt it and you heard it. That moves on to night two.
You tell me what you think of night two, because it was more mixed bag. Certainly, our Instagram followers, when I put the poll up, it was more mixed reaction. I mean, night one was pretty much 100%.
Yeah, I
Of
think I was
support.
interacting with various people on Twitter throughout the night, and I think that what let night two down was probably the beginning, the first two matches. Not that the first match was terrible; it's just that the fact that
It
it
was
ended.
terrible. It was
No,
terrible.
no, I
Come
don't
on.
agree with terrible. It was just the fact that it ended in such a diabolical manner where everyone disappears from the ring. I always think WrestleMania is a great time to end things rather than
Agreed.
start something new. And this is where they seem to start something new. I don't think Randy Orton will be involved. I think you're just going to have something between The Fiend um,
Well,
and
they confused people, didn't they? Because even you're confused. Nobody really knew what was happening. Once again, we see the voodoo goo coming down. Alexa. I wanted to see a Papa Shango cameo. I think that would have made it. And we'll
maybe
certainly be
we
talking
saw
about
Laura.
him in 1992. But, then she obviously, if you moved and watched Raw, I'm not sure she's going in a different direction now as well, or there's going to be something with Bray and the Fiend. But once again, they cut the legs off the Fiend. I
Yeah.
felt, and it was just, I don't know why they keep doing Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt. It wasn't great when they did it previously at WrestleMania, and I think this was equally poor.
Yeah, I mean, I think the rest of the card I actually liked. Other than maybe the women's match wasn't up to par, but the rest of the card was really stacked. I thought that the only issue I had was no match really got a lot of time.
Yeah.
Every match was around about the 10-minute mark or less. And I thought they could have given a couple of matches a little bit longer, up to the 20-minute mark to really tell that story, that WrestleMania story. And the only match that really got up to that length was the main event. I thought Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Logan Paul thing, that was really good.
Yeah.
I thought the action in Sheamus and Riddle were really good. The
That
ending
was
to
a good
that,
match.
the
Yeah.
bro kick while Riddle was coming off the ropes, that was tremendous. Apollo Crews and Big E, violent, but it only got 6 minutes, 7 minutes.
But it was, another just a non-disqualification match under a silly name.
If you're going to
Was
put it
it
in there, then do something
Yeah.
big with it, and I just don't think they give it enough time.
And make it different. Make it different. Not just that essentially a no disqualification match. And the Nigerian drums didn't really play much of a
No,
role.
they didn't at all.
So I think that was a little bit of a letdown. But for me, yeah, it was about the main. I mean, the one thing you've not mentioned for me, another low point of the two nights was this tag team situation with the women's division. Night one, the scramble was really poor, and night two, I thought that the title defense was pretty poor as well.
I think
Probably
you got
another low point.
to the aim of this is obviously to get as many people on the card as possible. So sometimes you're getting talent on there that are not necessarily warranting a WrestleMania place, but you got to have a filler match in each of the
It was
shows.
2 nights of this story that went
That's
nowhere.
fine. I
It was this
mean,
poor.
you got to have.
And then,
if
at
you go
the
back
end
to
of
every
the
WrestleMania up till now, even WrestleMania 17, our favorite WrestleMania, I bet if we go back through that show, we'll pick out a couple of matches that didn't deserve.
you do that, and you compare it to what's happened here.
I will. I'll do
Maybe
that.
I'm just annoyed that Billy Kay's been let go. I think that's
Yeah.
probably why I'm really lashing out. But
Yeah.
for me, that was a poor alongside, Randy Orton Fiend. But outside of that, I agree with you. I think everything else was, good to very good.
Yeah, and talking about very good, the main event I thought was tremendous. I mean, I love triple threat matches, and it really annoys me when people like Conrad and all of his guests trash triple threat matches as something.
Who's Conrad?
Enjoy.
Conrad can step aside, old man. That the future's here. We're talking now.
Well, I'm sure Conrad's got a few things to say about that. But the main event was brilliantly booked. Edge, Daniel Bryan, Roman Reigns. There was a lot of action. So getting involved. Edge had his moments. Daniel Bryan had his moments, but ultimately the big dog came out victorious.
The head of the table, just like I'm the head of the table, the chief.
Well, we might have to move around this table. You've always had that one side of this show, but maybe we'll switch things around.
I think so soon. I think with that ironing board's really annoying me now as well, and I think there's word on the streets that people are getting annoyed with your ironing board. We might need to do some sort of Iranian iron board match.
We might have
to do something to get rid of that. But yeah, I mean, I thought the main event was really good. The right outcome. I think people would have loved to see Daniel Bryan win or Edge win. And I think they didn't anticipate the reaction that Edge got. He was clearly the favorite in the crowd. But I think the right guy won, and it sets up potentially super clashes down the line with Roman Reigns. In terms of, the moment in that match, the kind of double crossface.
Yep.
And the cheer bit in Reigns' mouth, I think, that was really good. And then the cover on both competitors was a good way to end it. So yeah, I think Roman Reigns now is the mega star that they always wanted, but he's where he should be as a super heel, as opposed to a super babyface that had failed. So overall, I think a thumbs up for night one and night two, and actually an overall, as you said, really good weekend of professional wrestling.
Definitely, I agree with you, Fash. And that moves us on to our WrestleMania top 5 moments. We just want to close off this WrestleMania period with another WrestleMania dedicated show in which we're going to share with our audience our top 5 moments, 5 to 1. And let's see what we've got.
Well, and we've not discussed these with each other. So that, when we did the Supercard a week ago, we had initially come together and, we then negotiated and put it together in terms of the final 10 matches. In this case, I don't know your 5 moments, you don't know mine. So yeah, let's kick it off and see if we've got any overlap.
Okay, well, I'm going to go first, Fash, and in 5th place for me comes WrestleMania 14, the title match, and particularly the ending of that match. The Stonecold era has begun, or the Austin era has begun, as Jim Ross would say on the event. Him winning that title, his first title, the world title anyway, and Mike Tyson turning on Shawn Michaels. I thought that came together after that massive build-up and everybody thinking Mike Tyson was on the opposite side. That came together perfectly towards the end. And it was just a seminal moment for this era of wrestling, because that is now officially the Stonecold era begun.
Exactly. I mean, I say that was the moment that would lead to everything changing, because in a couple of weeks, WWE Raw would defeat Nitro after 83 weeks. And then, the train that was Stone Cold Steve Austin in the Attitude Era would really take it to the next level. It was a very important moment, if not one of the most important moments in history. And yeah, I think 5, you've done it a little bit injustice. In terms of my 5th moment, it's something which is my first real live kind of wrestling experience. The first WrestleMania, which I watched in real time a few days after it had taken place, but it was WrestleMania 8, and it's from the main event of Sid against Hulk Hogan. Now, this was a terrible main event, right, when it comes to WrestleMania main events, but it's the ending that is still something I vividly remember and remember popping big time. So the match ends in a disqualification when Papa Shango comes out he misses his cue, but he eventually comes out, and him and Sid are absolutely annihilating Hulk Hogan, who we all think is going to be retiring at this point. And suddenly you hear familiar music. It's the Ultimate Warrior's music. He hasn't been seen since August of 91. He comes running down. The crowd pops insanely. He comes in, he wipes out both Sid and Papa Shango, and ends the night posing with Hulk Hogan. So in a sense, it's the Warrior's back. He's going to be the man now. And it's a moment that, was huge then as a kid. And even now when you watch it, it's pretty cool. Interestingly, Warrior looks smaller here and he had a different hairstyle. So it was speculated for a long time that this was an imposter. But as we know, it was Jim Hellwig. And I don't know, do you remember that moment, Wax?
Oh,
For
yes,
me, it
I
was a big
definitely
one.
do. It was a tremendous moment. I mean, just the fact that he'd been absent for so long, and this was, as you say, it was probably the first WrestleMania that we watched close to live, if
Yeah.
not live, and the ending, obviously, to the match with 2-on-1 beat down to Hulk Hogan, and here comes Warrior to save the day. He was just tremendously popular in that era, and we were big fans, and the crowd popped big time. So yeah, worthy to be in top five.
Definitely.
So give me your fourth then, Fash, and then I'll give you mine.
Well, my fourth is what was your fifth, and this is where we're going to get overlap because we've not discussed this. But for me, yeah, the Austin era has begun WrestleMania 14. You've said quite a lot about it already, but we were leading to this moment, and everyone was going over to WCW. Hulk Hogan had went, Macho Man had went, Bret Hart was over there now, the NWO, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, and you didn't really have anyone on the WWF side. You were left with really Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, and all the chips were on Stone Cold. He had to become the next big thing. And this is the moment where he becomes it. And, WWE didn't look back after this. So for me, it was a huge moment. And it's my number 4 moment. I think now we move on to your number 4 moment. And I'm keen to hear this one, given the Austin era was 5.
Well, this is a particular moment in a particular match. It's two legends. It's Ric Flair and Shawn Michaels. It's the end of the match, WrestleMania 24. Shawn Michaels has just super kicked Ric Flair. He's on the floor. He's in the corner. He's waiting for Ric Flair to get up. As he does, Shawn Michaels just regretfully and, with a lot of anguish on his face, says to Ric Flair, "I'm sorry. I love you." And there's another super kick, and he takes the 1, 2, 3. And I thought, in terms of building to a moment in a wrestling match, this
absolutely
is right up there with any match that I've ever seen in terms of an ending. It's coming. It's heartbreaking to see two guys in a wrestling ring the way they performed, and I thought just in terms of the sheer emotion of it, for me, it meant it.
Oh yeah, it was huge, and it was certainly something that I was thinking about in terms of some of my honourable mentions. But yeah, the emotion behind it. Rick loves to cry anyway, right? And he's got a reason to cry here, and the perfect ending to a great story. It's a shame that he then wrestled in TNA, which spoiled it a little bit, but we'll forget that. But I think that's definitely something which is a top WrestleMania moment. So I won't attack you for that one.
And before I go into my number 3, I'm just going to give you some justification for it before I do. These are our top 5 moments, not necessarily the top 5 moments of all time in WrestleMania, which is why I'm going to go back to my favorite wrestler of all time, which is Bret the Hitman Hart. And it's his crowning moment. And I would say this is his crowning moment because this is his WrestleMania moment. It's WrestleMania 10, the main event against Yokozuna, where he wins the title after all having a match earlier on, which we discussed on the Supercard show. He beats Yokozuna. The wrestlers come out. And this was probably one of the first times that I seen this, where the wrestlers came out and they congratulated the world champion. And then Owen Hart obviously comes out, but he doesn't come into the ring. But for me, as a big fan of Bret Hart, this was the moment that solidified him as my hero.
Yeah, I think that was a big moment. It was the kind of the moment that began the new generation, right? I think that's what they're really going for. This was the first WrestleMania without Hulk Hogan, and Bret had been chosen. Going into this, it was Lex Luger or Bret Hart, but they went with Bret. And Lex Luger's the first one out, isn't he? That has to kind of congratulate Bret. He doesn't look very happy throughout the whole situation, but then as you see, the likes of Macho Man, Razor Ramon come out, and Bret's hoisted on everyone's shoulders, and he is going to be the leader of the new generation. So yeah, I think that's an interesting one. Certainly not one that I had, but I think once again worthy of contention. My number 3 is one which might be the number 1 for many others. It's more recent. I'll be interested to learn if it's in your top 5, but it's from WrestleMania 30, and it's the moment that shocked the world. It's Brock Lesnar ending The Undertaker's streak. I don't think any of us imagined that would happen. I, like millions around the world, was similar to that fan at ringside whose eyes popped out. I was the same, being a bit confusing. And did they mean to do that? Was that a botch? But no, the decision had been made. The Undertaker's streak came to an end. It was 21 For one, Brock Lesnar was given the victory. I still think, in hindsight, it was the wrong decision. It shouldn't have been Brock, but it happened. And yeah, for me, just the sheer shock of it. You can go back and watch it now. I'm sure people have watched it hundreds of times. It was the ultimate shocking WrestleMania moment and my number 3 on this top 5.
Certainly, I agree with you in terms of its shock factor. And if I was making a list of the most shocking things that ever happened, it probably would be up there with. But I really didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy watching Undertaker lose. I didn't enjoy Brock being the man to win.
But in that moment, were you not?
I was
suspend that disbelief, and that's absolutely what it's about, right?
So when I'm thinking back to it, it just doesn't sit well with me, so that's why I didn't put it in my top 5. But you're right, it's up there with maybe if not number 1 moment.
Yeah, it's the only kind of bittersweet moment I'd say I've got in my top 5, but I just couldn't make a list without it being there. Right, we're getting to the business end now. The top 2. What is your number 2 moment from WrestleMania history?
My number 2 moment is one that we've actually discussed in our WrestleMania 7 show earlier. So check out our archives for that. It's the moment at the end.
You're going to start crying again, aren't you? You're going to start crying again.
I might do. And after this, I'm going to put on that video as well. It's the moment between Macho Man, Randy Savage, and Elizabeth at the end of that retirement match where they finally reunite in front of the crowd. Everybody.
How did I know that this would be your top 2 or top
Well, I'm an emotional guy, Fash, so these sort of moments really sit well with me. I don't know how you can beat this for emotion. This is actually my number 1 point is going to beat this for emotion, but this is a tremendous moment for 2 legendary characters. So my moments certainly involve the legendary characters of WrestleMania. So I think is a worthy contender.
The Warrior and Macho Man, certainly an emotional match and the emotional ending. For my number 2 moment, it's something that I will never forget. I think any fan that watched it will never forget. It was about the emotion as well and about the crowd. It's when Icon faced off with Icon. It's Hulk Hogan versus The Rock, WrestleMania 18. The match was stupendous, but it's that moment when they come face to face and you will never replicate the crowd reaction that was in this match. It was just incredible. I think it could be a number 1 moment. It was just amazing. When they face off and throughout the match, the reactions that Hogan's getting, the heel reactions that The Rock's getting, the ending, it was just, it was a battle for the ages because of that crowd, that environment. And when you think of WrestleMania, I think you do think of that face-off.
Well, I knew for a fact that you were going to have this in your top 5, so I decided actually to leave it out of my top 5. And my main reason actually was, again, it was one of those moments where I was sitting uncomfortably watching the match because I hated the fact that fans turned on The Rock, who had been obviously the superstar of that era. And here comes Hulk Hogan, suddenly wanders back, and everybody's cheering. And now, look what happened. Look what happened in WrestleMania 37.
I thought we were going to ignore the fact that Hogan was booed out of the building.
Booed out the building, and again, the fans turned. So this is what I don't get with fans.
Well, would the Canadian crowd have turned on him if it was WrestleMania 37 was in Canada? Because they absolutely loved him. But you're right, it's a big contrast, and it was nostalgia.
But I think definitely it's fitting of a top 5 moment.
I think I still remember watching it live that night, and it's like, you're watching yourself, you're like, oh my god, this crowd is amazing, and you're so invested in it. And the match itself, we've discussed this previously, you turn away, the volume off, and you just watch that. If that's in the Performance Center, you're not going to give it a second thought. It was just the perfect ingredients for a moment for the ages. Now, I think I'll take a pause here, right? And I think what we should do is, because I don't know your first moment, you don't know mine, let's just both say what our moments are, and let's see if they overlap or not. And if they don't, we'll discuss them one by one. So who should go first?
I'll go first. I'm happy to go first.
Well, my moment is from WrestleMania 13. Where is yours from?
Mine's from WrestleMania 20. So there we go.
Well, that's okay then. I will let you go first then, because I think mine, I'm going to have to argue with this. Mine's certainly fitting of ending this.
Well, mine is actually Chris Benoit winning the triple threat match. And the moment is not specifically the match, which is tremendous, but it's the ending. It's where we see Chris Benoit standing as victor, and in comes Eddie Guerrero, who's also a world champion. And together they just look at each other in the ring, hug. And, for all wrestling fans, I think the fact that their journey from, where they started to where they reached the pinnacle of wrestling was a great story, filled with a lot of emotion. 2 guys that we know were clearly troubled in their personal lives with various demons and problems, but despite that, they were at the top of their game at this time. And it just adds to the moment, the fact that both are no longer with us for different reasons. I watch this moment very regularly, the match itself, and then the moment at the end. And I think, in terms of my moments, this is up there as number one.
Look, I mean, in 2004, if we're just using a time capsule, that moment was outstanding. And I think, I can see why it's your top moment. For me, it just doesn't age well because of what happened with Chris Benoit. So it's difficult to kind of remove it from that kind of point in time. But I can see you, and I know several fans would agree with your top moment. But I'm gonna leather you now for not choosing the moment that you should have chosen. My number one moment is the moment for me, the most significant wrestling match probably ever, and the moment that turned one man into a superstar. It's WrestleMania 13. It's Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Bret the Hitman Hart. It's the double turn. But the moment which turned me towards Stone Cold, and I think millions around the world towards Stone Cold, is when he's in the sharpshooter, blood is pouring down his face, and he refuses to quit, and he passes out, showing that he's the toughest SOB around. And it's the majestic double turn. Bret Hart is firmly the bad guy now. Stone Cold Steve Austin is the ultimate good guy. Everybody remembers the image, right, of the blood-soaked face. It's the ultimate WrestleMania match. It couldn't make it to our super card because Stone Cold was going to face The Rock in the main event. But to me, that moment, that was the moment that started it all. A year later, the Austin era begins. And then some years down the line, WWE wins the Monday Night War. So for me, it's the ultimate seminal moment.
Yeah, at the start of Stone Cold's mega rise in WWF. Yes, it's a tremendous moment. It's a great double turn. The fact that Stone Cold passed out because he's a weakling to the sharpshooter.
He wasn't a weakling. He was just, he was bloody gushing away and never quit, just like I would never quit. Whereas, before you'd even be in the sharpshooter, you'd probably start tapping.
Yes,
I know you were a big Bret Hart loyalist.
I
mean,
was.
he was in your top five, and you didn't like this, and you didn't like whiny Bret. But to be fair, it led to probably a great phase in his career where he was just a great heel. And still lived in Canada and the UK, so guys like you were still cheering him on. But for me, this was the beginning, because I must say, Stone Cold was getting some cheers leading into this, but for me, that was the moment that, like many fans, I became a big Stone Cold fan, and then the man just took it to the next level. So that's interesting. So I think looking at the top fives, then we have some differences, which is good, and it's good that we didn't discuss them. And I think all jokes aside, your 5 moments, I can certainly see why you choose them. The first one for me still is a little bit iffy, and I think in terms of my top 5, I think I'm the people's champion. I think the people would support me in that. Maybe we should throw a poll out there and see what everyone thinks.
Yeah, let's see which top 5 the people prefer. Fash, get on that poll. Just in terms of other moments that were worthy of mentioning, Fash, I mean, I've got
so many honorable mentions. Many.
I've got a few I'm just going to run through quickly. Just these specific moments in matches. One that we never seen until well after Hulk Hogan slamming Andre the Giant. If we'd been around, that would have been a crazy moment. We got to see the less good version, which was Lex Luger slamming Yokozuna. On that
hip toss, as Bobby Heenan said back then.
But the other ones were the spear in TLC 2, Edge on Jeff Hardy. The one that you might not remember, WrestleMania 31, Seth Rollins and Randy Orton. Seth Rollins going for the stomp. He lands on Randy Orton's neck. Randy Orton does his thing with the head and flips him into an RQ. I thought it was just a perfect moment of wrestling, summed up. And then a moment that probably went wrong, Brock Lesnar's shooting star press on Kurt Angle at WrestleMania 19. I thought, again, these are just things that just come back to you when you...
Yeah, exactly. No, I think, all of those moments, and I had some of them for sure. Other ones I'd mentioned, you mentioned your number one moment. A very similar moment happened 10 years later when Daniel Bryan won the title. So his journey at WrestleMania 30, I think that is a great moment. You said that, the Edge spear TLC 2, we covered it in detail in our last episode, but also him spearing McFoley. So the flaming table at WrestleMania 22 is a moment. I think Stone Cold and The Rock from WrestleMania 19.
I've got that on my list.
Stone Cold retiring, Rock kind of tapping him as he pins him after, and they have a few words. It was quite a big moment. Similarly, the handshake between Stone Cold and Mr. Man, which we've discussed at 17. And I guess, I would say even the Boneyard match from last year, I think something, had moment and different in terms of, Undertaker saying goodbye. So we think now. So I mean, there's so many others, and I think we'd encourage you, as always, give us your top 5 WrestleMania moments. Once again, it's your moments, the ones that resonate with you, and I guess shaped your wrestling fandom. But yeah, it's always good to go down memory lane. That's what the show's all about. So it's been interesting discussing our top 5s after building the ultimate supercard last week.
Yep, definitely has. And then that's the end of our WrestleMania week shows, and we're going to move back to our regular timeline. Just as a reminder, we're at the end of 1991. We're coming into 1992. Our next show is going to be a run through of the Rockers and the spectacular ending to that tag team. And then we move into what's going to be our favorite show of the year. It's Royal Rumble 92, and we're going to do a watch along Fash.
Yeah, so the next few weeks are going to be really interesting. Looking forward to discussing the Rockers and that amazing angle which took place on the barbershop. And then the watch along, we've been talking about this, for a while. Looking forward to it, going through each of the characters in that match. So that'll be in a couple of weeks' time as well. So yeah, looking forward to it. Also want to thank just the supporters, our audience. When it came to the supercard, we got a lot of feedback, and one name check I want to give is to one of our key supporters, Graham Jenkins. He came up with a card which was very different from ours. I mean, a lot of them were similar to ours, and some were on point, but his was really different. He had things like Andre Hogan as the main event. He had Macho Man Warrior as a semi-main event. He had Bret Hart Hot Rod for the Intercontinental title. He did matches up with the TLC2 for the tag team titles. So it was interesting getting that feedback. As ever, give us your feedback. We're going to look forward to, as the show develops, hopefully get fans on as well, to join us in segments. So yeah, lots of interesting stuff coming up. Glad we got these 2 specials out of the way. Really enjoyed them. And yeah, looking forward to the next show.
Yep, so check us out on Instagram and Twitter, Facebook. We're all there. YouTube, obviously, subscribe to our shows. You'll see all of our content as it goes live. But until our next show, he's Fash, I'm Wax, and this is Wrestling with Memories.
Catch you on the other side.